This is what I'm really excited for, especially for the kids. I've been preaching this to your parents for like a long, long time. So if they're not listening yet, your job as kids is to elbow them and be like, come on, let's go. And for the kids, I want you guys to set the example because some of you guys are gonna kill it with this. It's really fun. It's time to start publishing your own shows. We're in such a unique, amazing time right now in the world for all of you guys, where this phone right now is where everything's happening. I tell you what, like I remember the very first time I heard about podcasting was 10 years ago. And I was like, podcasting is for nerds. And it took me a decade before I started podcasting. And looking back now, man, if I had been podcasting for a decade prior to when I started, can you imagine what would have happened? What would have been different? I want to stress that like the opportunity is better now than ever. So that's the first thing, okay? The second thing is like, why do you need a show? A lot of people are like, well, Russell, I'm just gonna buy ads. I don't need my own show. And I get that. But I want to stress why this is so important. And I think my favorite illustration of this is from this guy right here, Arsenio Hall. There's this guy named Arsenio Hall, like in the early 80s. He had a late night talk show. For like 5 or 6 years, he was really, really popular. In fact, so much so that Bill Clinton, when he started running for president, he was an unknown candidate that nobody knew. He had no shot of winning. Arsenio Hall booked him on the show. He came on the show and he played saxophone. And this whole young demographic were like, this dude who's playing saxophone on TV is running for president? And he swooped up all of the younger voters, all the like that age demographics, started following him, started loving him. And they said that was the swing in him becoming the president, was being on the Arsenio Hall show. The show was on for a long time, eventually got canceled, and nobody heard from Arsenio Hall again for another decade or maybe longer until Celebrity Apprentice came on TV. Arsenio Hall was on there. I'm like, that's the dude that, like he's on the show. This is so cool. I'm watching him and he's going through the tasks. And one of the tasks, I think some guys are raising, millions and millions of dollars for their charity and bringing things in, and see Arsenio Hall on the couch calling the first person, calling the next, calling the next, calling the next. And nobody's answering his call. Nobody's coming in. And when the whole task is over, they show everybody how much money they all made. Everybody made money except for one person, Arsenio Hall. He got $0. And he's kind of frustrated. He said, man, he's like, when I had my own show, everybody returned my calls. Okay, this is why this is important for you. When you have your own show, you have a platform. You have a way to provide value to other people. I'm gonna walk you through this because you guys gotta figure out what your show is gonna look like, okay? Now what's interesting is that all the online shows kind of mimic offline stuff. Okay, so Facebook has, you can do Facebook Lives, have your own Facebook page. It's very similar like a talk show. Okay, your own email list is like having a direct mail. A podcast is very similar to radio. YouTube's very similar to having a sitcom. Instagram's very similar to reality show. Blogs are very similar to newspaper. None of the media is new, it's just new how they kind of deliver it. So first thing I want you guys to think about is what kind of show fits you the best. Now, when I started doing my podcast, I knew it had to be something that I loved or I would never do. I would do it 3 times and I would stop. Okay, you have to pick something you're gonna be consistent at doing because as you'll see here in a second, you have to publish at least 100 episodes before you're gonna get any traction. So you gotta do something you're so excited about that you can do more than just one. You would do it even if nobody was listening, because at first nobody will be listening. What's up, everybody? This is Russell Brunson, and welcome to the Marketing Secrets Podcast. So for me, I started podcasting, and luckily for me, I didn't know how to track stats on a podcast. I just knew that if I did a podcast, and I did it in my car every single day on my phone, I would be consistent, because I knew every day I'm in my car, I'm in my phone, click record on my phone, and I would drive and I would just talk. And I knew I could do it every single day, because every single day I had to get in the car, and it was consistent. Okay, you gotta figure out what's gonna be consistent for you. Do you know you're gonna keep doing? Because you gotta do a lot of it, or you're not gonna be consistent. One of the common things that happens to everybody is wondering, what gives me the authority to talk about this thing? I can't tell you how many times I'm on a stage like this, and I'm like, why am I the one up here talking about this? I don't feel qualified yet. The secret is you have to stay one chapter ahead of the people that are following you. If I waited till I knew everything about marketing before I started talking about it, I still wouldn't be there. So what happened is I started learning stuff, and I got excited. I'm like, oh my gosh. I started talking about it, and I got right here, and everybody started following me, freaking out too. And I'm like, I know, this is amazing. And I was just staying ahead of them, come on. You don't have to be the best, you just have to be a chapter ahead of everybody else. That's the key, that's the secret. I guarantee you in a year from now, things will be different than today, but I didn't wait till a year from now to start talking about it. I started doing it today because here we are. There's a Chinese proverb that says the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is right now. So step number 3 is you have to be consistent with this. You have to publish daily for at least a year or for at least 100 episodes. When I met Stephen Larson and he first came into our office and we were talking about podcasting, I think at the time I was on episode 300 of the podcast or something. And he said something in passing. He was like, yeah, the first 40 or 50 episodes you did, they weren't very good. I was like, oh. He's like, but then after that, you got your voice and start hitting it and they're getting better and better. And every single one's sentence has gotten better and better and better. If I would have stopped at the very beginning because I was bad, I never would have got to hear. One of the kids yesterday asked me outside, he said, what was the thing? What was the big aha of where you went from being a shy, awkward, nerdy person that you guys saw on camera or on stage the very first time to being super comfortable on stage. I was like, there was never an aha. We just kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it. And in the process of you doing it is where you find your voice. Next question people always ask, like, well, Russell, this is cool, but what do I talk about? I don't have 100 things to talk about over the next 100 days or whatever, right? He said the big secret to creating content is documenting the journey. Today I went to the thing and this is what I learned. Oh, today I read this book. Today I did this. And you're sharing the story of the journey that you were going on to get that result, right? I thought I'd be done teaching this stuff 5 or 6 years ago, but it's not. I'm still here. I'm still following up the mountain, still going, still going, still going. Number 2, this gives you the ability to start testing out different material. Have you ever like seen a comedian who's on like late night TV and they stand up with a microphone and like every joke just slays it and people just go crazy? Everyone thinks like that person's naturally talented, but they don't understand is what actually happened is that you rewind 2 or 3 years in the person's past and they were a person who's like, I want to be a stand-up comic. And so they sat down, they wrote 10 jokes. They went to their very first dive bar, they stood up with a microphone and they slowly, awkwardly delivered their 10 jokes. Boom, 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 boom. And they said, I delivered 10 jokes, only one of the 10 jokes landed. All the rest were just like booed and it was horrible. Like, oh, so went back home. He kept the one joke that was awesome, deleted the other 9, and they wrote 9 new jokes. Boom, boom, boom. So they do that over and over again. They test it, find the 2 or 3 new jokes, go back to the drawing board, come back again, do it, go back to the drawing board 3 or 4 or 5 times. So eventually they have 10 jokes that they know are perfect, they know are gonna land. So they have a chance to stand in front of the audience and they speak, boom, 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 boom. Everything hits, everything lands, and they become the funniest person in the world. And that's the same way this works for you guys. You're doing these things to find out what are the things people listen to. Okay, when we were designing this entire event, guess what we looked at? What are all the things we talk about that land the most with people, the things that connect the most? Like, those are the things we're gonna share. If you guys didn't care about something, like there's definitely things that even in this event, as Joy and I at night go through the workbooks, like that thing I talked about did not land. Like, so kill that, I gotta teach it differently next time. And so publishing all these times gives you a chance to test your material and find out what things are the best. And when you find out those are usually things like, okay, let's go deeper on it. Let's make a course on that or a product on that or whatever that thing might be. Okay, it's always fascinating what things people connect with, what things people don't. This is an example of 2 different hooks I threw out. This is after Conor McGregor got tapped out by a wrestler, which was awesome. Me and all my wrestling buddies were like, yeah, and I got 12 comments from my wrestling buddies, and then it just stopped. I was like, dang, well, that hook was funny for me, but nobody else really cared. And then a couple days later, I posted this one. I said, this is my thoughts about the F word. And I posted this thing about how I don't believe in using the F word and how I think it hurts your messages and help. And I kind of posted that thing there. Anyway, and it blew up. And I'm like, okay, that hook was good. People like that. But the more you're publishing stuff, the more you find out, like, what do people resonate with? I got one more thing I want to share, and then we're going to do a workshop here. But this comes back to publishing consistently for a year, for 2 years, for 5 years, for the next decade. A lot of times we think that a year is a long time, but a year goes so fast, and 10 years goes even faster. Anyway, so Nathan Barry, he's the owner of ConvertKit, one of my competitors / friends. He's awesome. He lives in Boise as well. He said this, it was endure long enough to get noticed. How many great TV shows have you discovered in season 3 or later? I started watching Game of Thrones after they had released 5 seasons. Pat Flynn had released over 100 episodes of his podcast before I even knew it existed. I discovered hardcore history years after Dan Carlin started producing it. This is such a common experience. There's so much content being produced that we can't possibly discover it all. So instead, we wait for the best content to float to the surface after time. If step 1 to building an audience is creating great content, step 2 is to endure long enough to get noticed. So for all of you guys who've committed, in a year from now, if you do this, if you publish 100 episodes between now and a year from now, I promise you, you will be successful. You'll have people listening to you. Your voice will be heard. You will have developed your voice to a point where people will care, and it will change everything for you and for your business, but you have to be consistent.